So let's, before I say any more interesting, the real purpose of this talk is actually to help understand the role of the teacher, the Lama, the Guru, in Tibetan Buddhist practice. So, in light of that, let's just, before we get started, just have a little sense of motivation, nothing too religious. Just to think that, if we were going to law school or medical school, we'd be motivated to attain a medical degree, medical degree, so we could maybe help other people. So that's really what motivation, when we talk about motivation in the Buddhist context, it's just thinking about that this is part of our doctorate program. We could think. By that we're not just here for the entertainment or the momentary enjoyment, which hopefully there will be that as well, of course, but that this is, whatever we discuss tonight, is also a means to develop our professional Buddhist mind, which just means an awakened mind, a mind that's fully healthy, completely awakened to the potential that the mind possesses, each one of us. And then we add a little bit on top, just like a doctor, someone in medical school could be going to medical school to get a degree, his medical license, to make lots of money, or to help people, maybe even go overseas or third world country to serve other people in need. So that's more of our motivation, to attain this awakened mind in order to help anybody in need, which is everybody. Okay. So, okay. I thought, how do I prepare for this talk? And actually, I can't really totally prepare. I just got to get my mind into it. I started writing this kind of outline and that kind of outline and that. And really, it'll just happen. What I want to do first, so I thought, okay, we'll take a little risk. I want to show you a 9 minutes and 56-second video. Because I don't know people even who know, what kind of experience or connection they have with Lama Yeshe. So what we have is video, and then we have the students and his teachings. So let's start. Is okay. I mean, this is good way of getting a feel for who he was and how he showed up in a very brief way. I'm going to take this off.
Does everybody here know who Lama Yeshe was?
You'll know by the end. Well, maybe I should thank you. So, anyone not know who he was? Okay. We'll start there. I mean, we'll start there. And then I'll give a little biography. Well, I'll give a quick biography. The quick biography is the founder. I can't give a quick biography. It's hard to do. Lama Yeshe escaped from Tibet in 1959 and was, let's see, I could figure out his age, but I won't do it right now. Anyway, he'd be about the same age as the Holiness Dalai Lama, I believe, about 80 years old. So 1959 would have been how many years ago?
Born in 1935. Born in 1935.
Born 1935, so in 1959 he was, young, 24 or something like that, right?
Yep.
Really young. So he escaped with a number of other Tibetans, his brother, and something. And on those details I don't know. You can ask John Landaw next week. He's working on Lama's biography. And I said to him, I talked to him yesterday, I said, okay, you do the biographical stuff. And he was like, I don't know the biography. He's writing it, but, Anyway, so it's not so important, but he was, Lama Yeshe, along with many other Tibetans, was kindly received by the Indian government and housed in a refugee camp, which was actually a former prison camp called Baksadur. Anyway, short thing is, at some point, Lama was in Darjeeling. If you want more details, maybe Pema knows him better. But it was in Darjeeling at some point, met a Russian princess, and eventually she was very very generous with her time and money. And at that time, Lama Yeshe was with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche being his protege. Often the case was with young Rinpoches, incarnate lamas. They always had a mentor, someone who took care of them. And by this point, Lama Yeshe played that role with Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Eventually, through Zena, they landed in Nepal and started teaching Westerners, and eventually bought this land on this hill, which was the king's astrologer's residence, and the residence itself became the first gompa, and that's where the lamas lived, and slowly started teaching. 10, 12, 15. Pema was there in 1970. Lama actually taught the first time in 72.
When I was there, Lama was speaking twice a week.
In 70.
Just public talk in 1970. I think they got to Copeland maybe in 1969.
Right.
And Lama would speak to the public Wednesdays and Sundays.
And hippies would come up, because this is during the strong hippie era, and Kathmandu, as people might or might not know, was a huge mecca for hippies. Thanks. And I'm trying to there's so much to do, right? So I'm talking too fast, slow me down. So the biography sits. Westerners, hippies were coming up to when they heard about this Lama and Lama Zopa teaching these classes in Tibetan Buddhism. And what was so unique and very, very rare, so this is actually interesting historically, is that back in our day, there were no translated texts. There were no books. I mean, one or two, they're starting to have them. So Chogyam Trungpa had some teachings, and Tartong Tuku, but generally, you're in Nepal, you had nothing. Those things weren't, of course, no internet. So there was very, very grinding, tough. The fact that Lama Yeshe spoke English at all is a miracle. That is proof to me of his qualities. How did he learn English? So that's how. So Kopan started then. Lama Zopa Rinpoche was from Solakumbu in the Himalayas, and had a connection with. Still today, the Sherpa population there. He was a very famous Lama in his previous life, and so he felt indebted to continue helping the Sherpas, and through that they started a monastery at Kopan as well as teaching foreigners. So it was always this it was always a monastery, still is, and so from there, that's how Lama Yeshe Rinpoche had contact with Western foreigners. What do you want to say, Westerners or foreigners? And from there, everything else grew and happened. Okay? So, did I answer your question? Do people know who Lama Yeshe is, right? So I'm going to show you. So this is just relax. It's TV night. And we'll... and I hope it's loud enough. Ooh, so it's only my speakers, right? We don't have any...
We have some other speakers as well. Well, let's see if that's loud enough first.
Yeah, well, we'll make it work.
I think we have some portables.
Let's just see if... Let's try this. Because it is also subtitled.
And our portable speakers aren't that loud either.
Okay, let's try our best.
So using the skillful, method using, then it's possible, life becomes transcendental experience. Life becomes enlightened experience, maybe. That is, isn't it? I don't know, maybe I cannot use that word. I think that is enlightenment experience.
Let me try this. As long as we don't have to be set up. Could you hear? You probably couldn't hear. Huh?
It just plugs into the headphone jack.
Okay. It's probably difficult to hear back there, right? No? Let's try this, as long as it's quick. If it doesn't work, we'll all get angry at Urs. Right?
You can also put it into the microphone.
Oh yeah, that's true. I always tease him because he's so efficient. And he turns red.
Swiss.
He turns red, yeah. I don't know if it's left or right. Try one. Let's see. Should we try?
Making one way is that Tantrayana, one having comprehension or recognition that I am the genius, I am the Buddha, I am the totality. And one way of doing all kind of, again, relative things. So should not conflict, should not make stuck. And also, the Tantrayana, and maybe West people like Tantrayana. That Tantrayana, we need perfect, mechanism. Perfect body, speech, mind, in other words, and then perfect body, speech, mind, order to help other people. So, meditation, you try meditation, to reach nirvana, disappear, not that purpose. To manifest better flower. That's it. So the emanation of jealousy, now we can use good, better use repeatedly one example, then it's better to communicate. Jealousy, what is it? It is a light body, twinkling, crystal, beautiful, beautiful. Or such, emanation can help. Other people, rather than you went into nirvana and disappear. Sometimes Western people worry, I practice so much, other meditation, sometimes I reach maybe with nothingness, then what can I do? Tantrayana, you understand? Tantrayana, to become, blooming rather than disappear. So you emanate, as the Avalokiteshvara. And your conscious, your purity is transforming as, manifest or transforming as, the totally, completely, pure body, as Avalokiteshvara. The reason, perhaps in this way put together, that each of us, we do have the, psychic or conscious or physical body. Two things we have. This body, bloating body, this body, will not transform. Radically, my bone becomes serious. No. But my, the conscious, my psychic, can transform. Perhaps you can say, one of my psychic is, without, aspect is, one of my psychic, one aspect is jealous. Well, for example, our life. Each day, each month, we manifest differently. Sometimes, wrathful manifestation. When is anger come out, isn't it? Sometimes, like generous, loving kindness, try to give all body, speech, mind, others, isn't it? You can see, entire different person. Yes, we know, isn't it? According to our life, we know each other, we know. Our dear friend sometimes becomes, is so good, like generous, And sometimes it's so wrathful, hurt, broke heart. So, you can see that objectively, if you look at one person. I mean, we all experience it. We don't know what happened. What happened? What makes this change happen? Perhaps you can say, 30 years, this way. Today, this way. I want to understand why. I don't understand. You understand? Of course, I don't understand. So that, that is the human being. Human beauty is, there is so many aspects, quality. Good quality, bad quality, you understand? And different manifestation, you understand? You can see, if you are sensitive, you can see through the oral vibration. Especially California people, they always say, oh, that's a good vibration. Very good vibration. And sometimes the things they are sort of very sensitive, I'm not sure that is. I'm doubtful, yeah, I don't know why that. That kind of expression is maybe new expression, isn't it, nowadays? People will not use that kind of language. Oh, similar. Okay. Those examples are similar. Tantrayana is a reasonable scientific explanation, not something, for imagination. It has related, according to our life.
Okay. Give you a little feeling. I tried to find something that brought out Lama's different qualities. The main reason I chose this is because it's ocean of compassion, right?
Yeah.
So I thought, oh, it's a good, what do you call it? Good fit. So, so I had this incredible, unbelievable fortune, really. So Lama Yeshe, as we get on, the reason we're talking about him is a little bit like why we would talk about His Holiness Dalai Lama, or why we would talk about Lama Zopa Rinpoche, okay? and there's, of course, others. The reason we talk is because the quality of the being is something different. That's it. You know, something different than us, or at least how I see us. I mean, you might be the same as that category, but I'm going to, according to my projection, I don't see you that way. Okay, so that's what we're talking about Lama Yeshe. We could talk about Lama Zopa Rinpoche, we could talk about His Holiness, we could talk about Lama Tsongkhapa, we could talk about Milarepa, we could talk about Marpa. Why? Because they're in a different category. So the category of being is, we could say there's only two kinds of beings, including all sentient beings, animals and spirits and angels and all that stuff. Okay, there's just two really kinds. Those who are awakening and those who aren't. And we could say that we could classify a little bit different in light of that. We could say those who are awakened and those who aren't. Now, awakened in this sense is not, I'm not using that in terms of having attained enlightenment. You know, full awakening is enlightenment. But there's something else, as you know, that happens, and that there is a point where through our practice, something happens, and that happens from a direct insight into reality. Those of us who don't have it are in that other category. Those that have it are in that category. Okay? So awakening, that's what I mean by awakening or not. Now, it doesn't mean we're not on the path to awakening. That's okay, and that's good, and that actually makes us different than many other sentient beings, animals and other humans who are not even engaged in that. So that's good. But in this description, I just wanted to make clear that what we're talking about is those beings who have had insight, direct, non-conceptual insight into reality. Okay? And those beings will never, ever go back into this confused state that the rest of us are in, all rest sentient beings are in. Now, they might take many, many, many years, eons, whatever, to become fully awakened. But it almost, from my point of view, it doesn't matter. Because the quality of the being who has that insight and the rest of us is so phenomenal that actually, and I might be wrong about this, but I think if we meet, so when a being has that insight into reality, sometimes they describe it as that person goes through 10 stages before they're a Buddha. And those 10 stages could last eons and eons or whatever. And that person in the Mahayana tradition with the thought of others, of benefiting others, is called a bodhisattva. So if I meet a first level bodhisattva, I probably can't tell the difference between him or her and a Buddha, because the quality of that being is so different than the ordinary person. Okay? So anyone who has attained that, if we know, now there's many who may have attained it but are hidden, and that's possible too, of course. But in the case of more public figures like His Holiness Dalai Lama and these other great teachers, Lama Zopa, Lama Yeshe, now, so that's why we're talking about them. And there's a very different experience. They kind of can't hide that they're different. Yeah, they try, but it seeps out. You know, Lama Zopa Rinpoche is really amazing because, you know, sometimes you feel if you've gone to his teaching, sometimes you feel, well, you know, I don't know if I can take my kids to his teachings or my parents. You know, they're gonna get all antsy and they're not gonna quite get it. You know, you think like that, or you don't. I think like that. You know, people are maybe it's gonna be hard at first, but if you stay around Lama Zopa long enough, you go, wait a minute, there's something going on here. But he tries to hide it. I don't know, tries, but it's hidden because that's part of the vows anyway. is you don't demonstrate you don't demonstrate these unique qualities that you have. But they can't help it, right? It seeps out. This whole Dalai Lama it tries to act so ordinary. All these politicians and diplomats, but if you're around this Holiness for even just a few short time, something's different. Okay? So now we're talking about Lama Yeshe. How did he do that? So I had the great fortune before 1975. I was interested in spirituality and was involved in the yoga Hindu tradition, which was very common. There wasn't much, very, very little Buddhism, not accessible anyway. What was here pre-1975, and but I was involved in that yoga scene, and so I really had that idea. Baba Ram Das and all that. It's pretty far out, but far out in a good way. And so I really had that idea. I was really influenced by the idea of you finding your guru. I don't know if people still have that these days. But there was like this groundswell, like when you're involved, you go, I got to go to India to find my guru. Okay, so I had the really unbelievable fortune that I went to college, and as those who know me know, I hated school, and I went to college only because I made a promise to my mother. I took a year off between high school and college, and then I told my mom, I think I'll take one more year off. She said, you promised. And she found there were only two kind of alternative colleges in those days, maybe three. Santa Cruz was just about to start. Antioch College and Evergreen State College and I went to Evergreen State College, and I was still into my yoga trip and stuff. And then I had a falling out with that whole scene. That's another story. But then this Year in Nepal program came up. Year in Nepal, and I looked, where's Nepal? And I just looked and, oh wow, it's right next to India. I could sneak across the border when no one's looking and find my guru. I'll go as a student, they don't know. And that's how I ended up in Nepal. 1975, 18 other students. I studied intensive Nepalese language and culture, and unfortunately it wasn't Tibetan language. It would have been much more useful than, we used to call Nepalese gossip language, because that's all it seemed to be good for. Okay. So I was struggling in we had to have a research project, and that wasn't my thing, right? So I had this research project to study real Hinduism versus what was happening in America, because I had this falling out in America with the Hindu yoga thing. So my advisor said, well, why don't you go over and just find out what it's really about? And when I walked, and she was my advisor in Olympia before we left, and she said, oh, by the way, you might be interested in this book. And she passed this book to me, and it was the Bodhicharyavatara, which is, the seminal text from Mahayana Mahayana Buddhist for the Bodhisattva. And I looked at it, I read some. I thought, I never read anything like this in my life. That's a different story. So I was in Nepal with this project, and I couldn't get into it. It's like studying Catholicism in Italy. It doesn't make sense. It's like it's everywhere. I'm going to study it through watching the culture. So I was getting desperate because everyone was moving forward with their programs, their research projects, and I was stuck. And so I was living in a village, part of the program, and up on this hill was a little monastery, and I could see it up there, and I didn't know what it was. So during that time, I went, and one of my friends was living with a Thangka painter, because his project was painting, Thangka painting, and the Thangka painter's father was a Nyingma Rinpoche, very high Lama, and so I was into this guru thing, right? And so I asked him. I said, "Well, how do you find a guru? How do you know?" And he looked at me, and he was quite interested in my question. He got very animated. And he said, well, when you meet the guru, you have to examine him. I'd never heard that before. Because in the tradition I had come from, you just accept with faith. That's why at least I understood it. Faith, in terms of the Hindu tradition, that's how I understood it. I may have been wrong. So he says, yeah, you examine the guru. And then you examine him some more. And then you continue examine him. And when you see a mistake, nail him to the wall like a fly. Wow. You never told me that in the other traditions. Well, that's important, because that says, don't give up your discrimination. You examine him, and he also examines you. So that's the proper relationship between guru and disciple in the Mahayana tradition, particularly in the Tantrayana. You have to. It's not an easy thing to commit to. Both have to be comfortable and confident. And I think I'm saying this because as typically Americans or Western people, we just jump in. We don't feel we're entitled. If something doesn't feel right, we think there's something wrong with us. And I'm just saying, maybe you can check longer. Don't give up your discriminating mind. Okay, that's a different topic? Emily's going to teach that. And which module is that? Next year. Okay. So I was struggling with this project, and so this Lama told me this. I thought, wow, that's pretty radical. And I was struggling with this project, and so someone said, why don't you go up to that monastery? They teach this 1-month meditation course to foreigners. And I thought, nah, no way. Anybody have an idea why I wasn't excited about it?
Meditation.
No, it wasn't the meditation. I liked meditation. I don't know if anyone will get this, unless you know me really well. It's like, what the hell am I going to go up to a place where there's a bunch of tourists? I'm like indigenous. I speak the language. I'm living in a village. I'm not going to go there. They don't. I was really arrogant. But I was struggling with this project. So I wandered up there and asked about this course, and I sat. And in those days, you had to be interviewed to be accepted into the meditation course. It was the 8th course, but it was really only the 5th year, something like that, because they did a couple mid-year courses and they counted them. Now they just do once a year. They count the 8, the big one, the 1-month one. They do lots of the short ones. So I had to be interviewed by this very austere Dutch monk who had just been in retreat for 9 months, Marcel, and I was not syncing with him at all. And I thought, I'm not going to get into this thing. But I guess maybe they needed the money or whatever. So I was accepted. And I'm telling you some personal things, okay? So probably not such a good idea sometimes. But anyway, my experience was that the first night I stayed there, I had a dream. And in the dream was a Lama. And he kept going like that, like that to me. Like, or maybe with one hand, I can't remember. And smiling. Well, I had it with this other tradition, because it was all about getting high through meditation and bhakti and chanting and all this stuff, that I didn't trust anything. So in the dream I said, if you're not real, disappear. He smiled and then disappeared. And I thought, I've blown it. I gave the wrong question. Because it seems like if you're real, then you choose to disappear. If you're not, how could he, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's ironic. It's kind of opposite. I didn't think well in the dream. The next day, they're setting up the altar where we held the course. And there they put a picture of Lama Yeshe, and was that picture of him. It was that Lama. I think it's a trick. I mean, I'm not saying anything about me, but trick from his side. So, in those days, Lama Yeshe didn't speak to the course until about the 3rd week, after you're just like, about to he had it. Rinpoche's going on and on about the hell realms for 3 weeks, and you can't take it anymore. And the Lama comes in. Everyone's depressed, or people want to leave, everyone's angry, right? Then, then all of a sudden, Lama comes in. Striding. He just climbs up on the throne, doesn't do prostrations, what's with this guy? He's this Lama. And he gets up there, and he, let's move that. And gives this talk. And everyone, it's like releasing the air out of a balloon. You finally felt there was hope. You finally felt there's someone who understands me. He's saying, you can attain enlightenment. You have this quality. You saw like in that, positive about equality. He went straight to your mentality, culture, mentality, cut through. Do you notice in that recording some interesting use of language?
Mm-hmm.
Where did he get that? Your mechanism, your psyche, your purity. It's amazing. He had this unbelievable use of the language. So I encourage you to read more, watch more of his, particularly his videotapes, because there's not many. Because sometimes in the writing, they would have to, of course, edit it in a way that people can understand it. But he was pretty unique. So I thought, wow. And then that second 2 weeks, there's silence. I thought, I really felt I met my guru. Maybe I was just attracted, because it was so different. So we have silence. So there's silence the last 2 weeks. And I'm walking through the garden one day, and there's Lama Yeshe. And he actually said to me, "Oh, you're keeping silence." And I said, "Yeah." Later years, I thought, I think I could have broken the silence for a few minutes. Finally meet, guru of my dreams. And I was like, yeah. And he's with one of the other young incarnate lamas. And he holds just like I couldn't find the picture. There's a picture of the exact character I couldn't find. And he's holding like one of these flowers, and he says, "The students who know me know that I love flowers." So that was one indication. Someone's different here. Something different. Now, again, going back to our recording, what did he talk about? Blooming flowers. Remember? So I think that I began to get, over the years, understand Lama Yeshe, and of course Rinpoche, and so they never say anything that's trivial. Even if it doesn't make sense, years later, it will make sense. Because they have complete control of the body, speech, and mind. So, from there, what happened? Okay. So, for 8 years, what happened was, I had to leave a year and a half later to come back to the States to finish the 1 semester of school. And so the year in Nepal program became a year and a half for me. And I was leaving that day. Well, the day before, out of nowhere, I had started teaching the young monks, for example, some English. I know what I was doing, right? I just got recruited. I turned 21 just after I arrived in Nepal, and I was there for about a year and a half. So I must have been 22, something like that, 22 and a half, whatever. And also I get this message that, Lama Yeshe is inviting you to breakfast tomorrow morning. And I thought, oh God, because I was so nervous. I mean, this is such a powerful, because I didn't have a lot of contacts, so anyway, I had a lot of fantasy about him. I just see him up on the throne, and my students who know me know I love flowers, and and his teachings were phenomenal. Not only that, he did know me because I had done retreat. And I did retreat up in the Himalayas. I did the Milarepa trip. I went up to a cave. I didn't do it in the cave, but next to it in a small hut above Tupten Choling, 3 hours above. And Lama suggested I go up there. And anyway, that's a different story. So he did know me. And in fact, when I came back from that retreat, has anyone ever done Vajrasattva retreat? Pamela, has you have? We're not supposed to say, so I shouldn't ask. Has anyone not done it? So when I did Vajrasattva is 3 months, very intense, and it's a intense purification retreat. And I had many difficult. I mean, my God, it was tough. I mean, I bit off more than I could chew. My food was brought to me once a week by a Sherpa I met, and I'd have to cook it all myself on wood, and I was just like insane. It was just like no one was up there. There's one meditator in the over by the cave, and we couldn't talk because he spoke Tibetan. He didn't speak Nepali. So I really just cried and cried. I mean, I had so much pain, so difficult, I can't describe, mental suffering, unbelievable, 3 months. And I had to sit on that thing, on that seat, which was actually, I made a seat, cushion with all these pine branches behind you. Do you know what happens after you sit on those for like a week? Yeah. And the rule is you can't move your seat once you've done that. Once you made it, right? I had mice crawling across my legs. And you're not supposed to move, right? If you move, you got to start the session over, or they're all like that. Anyway, so it was a nightmare. So I came back, and Lama said so I met up with Lama Yeshe. And I don't know why. I don't know what had the good fortune to see him afterwards. And he said, so, how'd it go? And I said, oh, Lama, I'm so thankful I didn't die. He said, why? And I said, because my mind was in such a hell realm. If I had died, I'm sure I would have gone straight to the hell realms. And he looked at me, with kind of a common look he gave me, which was one of, like, scorn, and said, I said, I'm sure we're going straight to the hell. He said, how do you know? He said, I think you would have gone straight to the God realms. So it's important. Why is it important? Because things we read the Dharma, we study it, and we make these conclusions. Very tough to conclude like that. I think you might have been right. I think the suffering I had because I was up to that point, I had really, really fallen in love with meditation and the teachings. I thought I was really progressing. I went up there, I'm going to attain enlightenment now. And I was just, I couldn't focus for 10 seconds, and yet I had to do this thing. Well, maybe because I had all this attachment to the meditation experience, which is the God realms. So amazing that Lama could say like that, If it was me and some student said that, I would have said, oh yeah, good thing you didn't, good thing you didn't die, right? Because we don't, or I don't, have that, see the wisdom that you attain by seeing reality makes you completely clairvoyant. It makes you see all the subtle different interactions of your own mental imprints. You can see the future, you can see the past. Patterns. Things can change in the future, of course, but the patterns you can see. So sensitive. You're so highly sensitive. Highly, highly, highly sensitive. So I was invited to breakfast. I didn't, and so I'm intimidated. And so we go up, and remember, Pema will remember, in those days, luxury was a can of peanut butter from India. And then there was one kind of bread in Kathmandu, but it was white bread, and it said, with big bold letters, machine made. You're supposed to be like, oh wow, Anyway, so I went up, had this breakfast. We're sitting on the roof of the Gompa, blue sky. It was February. It was cool, but beautiful morning. And I'm having this breakfast, and I couldn't eat. I was so nervous. It was like I was leaving that afternoon on flying out of Nepal after this year and a half. And Lama was making chit-chat. He was good at that. And I was like, whatever I was. And I got the guts up, finally, to ask him, so Lama, should I come back? Because I was so in love with what was happening. I loved Nepal. I loved the Dharma. I loved him, Lama Zopa, the boys, the monks. I was like, wow, this is just my dream life. And he looked at me again, that look, right? And he's just like that. So I never tell my students what to do. So this was the first of a continual sense of disappointment. Particularly me disappointing him. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. I never tell my students what to do. And I thought, okay, here I am, the biggest idiot. And now I can't eat at all, right? Because what am I going to do? And I just asked a stupid question. And but one thing, I didn't catch that he said I was a student. That was awesome, but I didn't catch it then. I thought he was just being general, I guess. So we're eating there in silence, and he's got jam, this peanut butter, the white bread, and we even had hard-boiled eggs. Hadn't eaten like that for a year at least. Right? Then he looks at me and says, so, when you come back next year, I want you to teach my students. I never tell my students what to do. Because he wants to set me up first. Doesn't want to, he's in control. So I came back to the States, and I finished that degree, in undergraduate, and the only way you could stay a long time in Nepal was either you were in development or you were a student. And I had a non-tourist year-and-a-half visa as a student, and I somehow was confident that I could come back as a student again. So I found a program that was an independent master's program. And most master's programs are what? A year? 2 years maybe? Not in my case. I had to keep that. So I have the longest master's program ever, because I came back to Nepal a year and a half later and got a 10. Well, I didn't get. I kept a 10-year non-tourist visa, because I had to keep being a student to keep the visa. So I was able. One of the lucky ones. I think Pamo probably had to go in and out of the country, because you could stay 3 months, maybe 6, or try to buy a visa. So I was very, 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 very fortunate. I didn't have any of those worries. So from 1975 until Lama Yeshe passed away in 1984. So how long is that? 9 years. I had the great fortune of having a very close relationship, because Kopan was the home monastery, and no matter how our organization grew, they always came back for the November course and more. Often, it was really the Western or the foreign centers they were just beginning. They weren't grabbing their attention how they are today for Lama Zopa Rinpoche, for example. So I came back. Now I want to say something about my one quality of my relationship. I have some photos here, but they're not in any particular order. When I came back, and my job was to teach the monks. And what I did is I didn't know how to teach English second language. So in that year and a half I was back here, I finished my degree at Evergreen. I looked for an ESL program, or EFL. And I found there was a 9-month program at UCLA. So I said to my mom, remember I said I hated school? So I'm going to talk to my mother and say, what do you think about if I go to this graduate program at UCLA? What'd she say? You'll never get in. It was one time she always told this story. I'd already applied and got accepted. Amazing. I didn't have, school wasn't my thing. So I told her that. It was like my one coup in being right. Otherwise, she was always right. So teaching the monks, one of my students does anyone know who this young monk is? Besides Paymore? Yes. So this is the incarnation of Lama Yeshe's guru. Jampa Gendun, I think. Geshe Jampa Gendun. Ngawan Gendun. And this incarnation is, now we know him as Yangtze Rinpoche, who's the head of Maitripa College in Portland. So he was one of my first students, because I tutored him privately. And so I was working there. So I worked for until I left Nepal in late 1988. Was living at the monastery most of the time until the last couple of years, and was in charge of this program. So I helped, not by myself by any means, but started that program with English, social studies, and mathematics for the monks. And the reason this is significant is if you know what the climate was like in I went back in 1977. In 1977, 78, what the situation was like in Nepal is very poor. The monasteries there were almost all of them were poor. And starting in England, now I want to just communicate what was unique about many things were unique about Lama Yeshe. And one of the things is, you can watch what he was talking about, that was 30, 35 years ago. And there's if you listen to his other talks, you go, wow, like they're talking about that now. Neuroscience, and Lama was so he has such vision. So, and that's what blew people's mind. Again, all these realized beings have vision like that. But the way the Lama hit you with it was sort of scary, because you knew he meant it, and he was holding you accountable. So, in this program I started. So I started this program, and what do you think the talk around town was about? Oh, they're teaching English up there at that Kopan monastery. Lama Yeshe, he just wants to train the monks to speak good English so they can go to Hong Kong and make lots of money for him. They had no context of why monks should learn English. And I remember telling Lama Yeshe this once. He was see, this is the thing of the vision. So it's just one example. There's others. So I remember telling Lama this once. And about I was bothered by that because Kopan was always kind of singled out. Because we were radical. But we were radical because of Lama Yeshe. Not because of anybody else. Not even because the Westerners were there. It's because Lama pushed our boundaries so hard, so far. He had my wife start a ginger beer business in Kathmandu, in Nepal. The first year, we had them store. We had a place in town as well. We started a city center. And they had a little garage, a little shed. We go in one there, and all the bottles have exploded. Another time, Lama thought ginseng was a ticket because he's always looking for ways that the monastery would be self-sufficient. Ginseng. Then another one was Pam was always the kind of instinct. I was like I was not as courageous. So he'd say to her, "Oh, I want chickens." Chickens in a monastery? I mean, it sounds like normal, but he wanted the eggs because he was worried about his monks getting enough protein. We were very poor. It was not the place to be during monsoon when the money was running out and the road was impassable. I was there many monsoons and I lost a lot of weight. It was a good diet program, actually. And all we ate was rice, lentils, and some really overcooked, maybe. At the end of the summer, it was really cauliflower. And then we had a garden, some cauliflower. What's that? Okra. Like okra, is that? Yeah. I mean, it wasn't very tasty. So I told Lama, I said, Lama, everyone's talking about us. Like, this is mostly the Tibetans, by the way, the other Tibetan communities. And I said, they're just saying we're training these monks to go to Hong Kong and do business and anyway, a lot of these guys are disrobing, and they are going to Hong Kong. In other words, a particular tribe called the Manangis were coming to learn English. And they were coming for business to learn, because the kids would know English to be traders in Hong Kong, Singapore, Thailand. And so I thought, this is really, really wrong. We got to do something about this. And Lama looked at me and said, why? I'll ask them for money later on. It's practical. Those who were monks, are huge supporters of the monastery now. They were young, yeah. A lot of my students, these little monks, yeah, they're big supporters. They were for years. I don't know about today. And they did support the monastery. And remember, we were poor. So Lama's style was like that. Very revolutionary, very radical. And I'm trying to think of another example with the ginseng. Oh, the chickens. What happened? So Lama asks my wife, set up a chicken coop. And she's at that point she's getting no help from the other senior, the manager, or the abbot of the mon. They're not really like into this thing about chickens. Why? That's a lot of questions. Why do you think they couldn't get their minds wrapped around it? They didn't know how. They thought the chickens lay eggs. It's a sentient being inside the egg. So we'd be, continually killing. Of course, we weren't going to have any roosters. So they were not fertilized. It was really, really hard to explain that. And they just couldn't. They couldn't get it. They just assumed. So they really fought with, once Lama left, and of course Pam, my wife's holding the keys to this project and not getting a lot of cooperation. But eventually it happened. Now, one time we were up in the Zopa, up in the temple, and with Lama, and we hear this incredible racket downstairs, and one of the dogs, we had these pretty vicious dogs, these big mastiffs, had somehow gotten into the chicken coop and killed 2 of the chickens. And Lama went running down, and Rinpoche went running down. They went as fast as they could. This flurry of robes flying and going down, and because they're hearing this racket, they go in, and then I don't know why I stayed up there. I was doing some work with Lama, and he came back. Lama Yeshe came back a few minutes later, and he explained, the dog's name was Omani. So Omani killed 2 chickens. He said, but don't worry. Lama Zopa, he transferred their consciousness to pure realms. Lama looked at me and said, I wish I was those chickens. How do you know? So, so here we have, I'm not sure which course this is, but at the end of each meditation, this is in Bodh Gaya. So this is the enlightenment experience that Lama designed for, we had many 6 weeks of initiation from Rinpoche. And the reason I had this picture up here is because one of my friends was maybe going to come tonight. This lad here. But he didn't come tonight. He was a monk for a couple years in Copan. He's from Spain. And anyway, so just an interesting photo. A lot of people might be recognizing that. It's not everyone who attended. And so let's go on. I don't have a story about that. Lama insisted, and those of you who came to my Misleading Mind course, Lama Yeshe had this uncanny ability, like the Soulness Lama, maybe Lama's own, to connect with anybody. You could say almost everybody was his friend. And he, it's interesting, he would come down to their level. Now, Lama Yeshe, one of the things about Lama Yeshe in particular, I think one of his unique qualities was that he would, it's hard to explain this, but he would open the door slightly more to the qualities of his mind and the awakened mind than many other lamas. In other words, you could be with them and have some interesting experiences. And the only reason for that is you go, oh, I see it's possible. Sometimes you're just like, give me a miracle, give me a sign, right? But Lama Yeshe, he did do that. A little more. Not showing off. He used to say, and then people would say to him, wow. He said this, he'd say this publicly or to me. He said, oh, everyone thinks I'm the magic Lama. But I don't do anything. It's the mind that's magic. So just the quality of his mind. And this will happen around any Lama or any person who has some attainment like that. It seeps out. But something with Lama Yeshe is that he would actually, I think he felt, and I don't think it was conscious, but felt that part of his job in recruiting us foreigners, Westerners, was to give you a little more peek into the possible. I also think that that's one reason why he didn't have a long life. I just have that feeling. Because one time I told him about something, I don't know, some good experience in meditation or something. He says, no, don't talk about that. Well, I was doing it with him, so it was fair to do it. But he was giving me a lesson. He said, when you talk about it, it loses its power. And I've noticed with our culture here, people have some little experience they talk about, don't they? We're not discreet. Whereas in this tradition, Lama was educating, at least me and other people, in the tradition is it's secret. It's private. Particularly in terms of the Tantrayana. So in the Buddhist tradition, we have the Theravada and then the Sutrayana and the Tantrayana, or the Theravada and the Mahayana, we could say. Mahayana being Sutrayana, and then the Tantrayana. And I tried to look up a definition, I didn't find it, about the different role of the guru in those three traditions. So I don't want to couldn't find exactly, so I don't want you to take what I'm saying as actually accurate. It's just my feelings about it. Okay? Buddha said that he would manifest through the teacher. And so I think when people had experience with Lama Yeshe, they really felt like, oh wow, there really is a Buddha. He just had that kind of karmic connection with students and people to give you that little flash. More than I've seen with other lamas in that way. He was sort of like, in the sense, if you read about the Tantrayana masters, Tantra teachers, a lot of stories about having some sort of, I don't want to say eccentric, but unusual demonstration of their teachings, of the teachings. You see that often. So like if you read about the Mahasiddhas of old, or you read about, Tilopa and Naropa and all those amazing beings, you tend to see some pretty outrageous behavior, stories, don't you? There's actually, Jan Willis wrote a book, the biography of the 84 Mahasiddhas. Did I get the number right? 84? Yeah. Well, she didn't write all 84, but she wrote about, what?
The lineage, the Mahamudra lineage of Buddha.
Is that what she wrote about? Okay. Which has, no, I think there's another book. Maybe. Anyway, I thought she wrote about them.
Enlightened beings.
Is that on the Mahamudra
It's
lineage?
biographies of the different lamas in the Mahamudra lineage.
Is that an
in
old,
South
how old book? How old is that?
A long time ago.
No, it's probably the one I'm referring to. I was thinking, I didn't read it, so. I was thinking it was a number of the Mahasiddhas. But there are a number of the Mahasiddhas in there, right?
He downloaded the Mahasiddhas.
He also wrote about Drupal Kunle. Outrageous behaviors. You know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I think it's important. That's the Mahayana expression through the tantric path, through the Vajrayana. So that guru is going to sometimes manifest a little different. Not necessarily, but could. In the Mahayana Sutrayana path, you might have a slightly different representation of the perfect teacher in that sense, of the sutras. Okay? Now, Lama Yeshe, in his case, could manifest in all those roles. But interesting thing, why I have this is, so an example of this was in 1977, when I came back for that time. Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche came to the United States and taught a 1-month meditation course in Yucca Valley down near Palm Springs. And I was so, again, lucky I was able to attend it. And then before, I don't know, somehow had a break in school or something like that. And my parents, who had met Lama Yeshe a few times, in fact, this was after I returned, this picture. So that's my mother, and my sister, and me, and of course Lama. And there's upstairs in the top of where their rooms were, their residence on top of the small little monastery we had. So, but in Yucca Valley, I asked my parents if I asked Lama Yeshe, could my parents come out and have tea or something with you? Right? He said, of course. So they arranged a tea, and my brother was also attending this course. Now my brother, he doesn't mind me saying, I don't think, was very committed to drugs, and actually went in. He was an addict, and he was a big user even back in those days. But he was really interested in spirituality, so he was at this 1-month meditation course. And I remember it was kind of towards the end of the course, Lama invited my parents to come out. And my parents lived in Los Angeles, it was only a couple hours away, to come out and have tea with him. So I was there, my brother was there, and my mother and my father. And, by the way, Lama loved beautiful things. Now, there he is, this Himalayan monk, as he used to say about himself. There he was, having tea with my parents and myself and my brother, talking to my dad about, my dad's a businessman, about his business. And what do you do here? What do you do there? Oh, and what's the market like for that? It's like, what? They're talking about the business stuff? And then it turns to my mom, and he starts talking to her about orchids. My mom liked orchids and collected orchids. And they're talking about like recipes. what is going on here? You know, it's like I'm sitting there very uncomfortable, and honestly, this is true. I was thinking, come on, Lama, zap them. There's not much time. We've already been here for 45 minutes. And Lama's going on. I was getting more and more uncomfortable. I don't know what I was thinking in those days, but I just wanted them to get it, you know. And like I said, they had met Lama a couple times, but I just wanted to zap them. So when so then the tea ends. I don't know. We're there for maybe an hour, and my parents are getting up to leave, and I'm heartbroken because there was no like exotic magic that happened. And so as we're leaving, my mother, I don't know, this is kind of unbelievable how mothers, just so unbelievable how sentient beings are, mothers and fathers. She turned to Lama and she said, "You've helped him so much," pointing to me. And she looked at my brother and Lama and she says, "Now will you help him?" It still gives me chills kind of thing, because she was like taking refuge. Isn't that amazing? Would you ever say that to anybody? You don't even say that to a therapist. I don't think. Maybe someone does. And so Lama turned to my brother, beard, still has a beard, turned to my brother, grabs him by the beard, pulls him right like here. And he said, okay, like to my mother's question. My brother's like, you know. And when we left, and my brother, like I said, was into spirituality, but this is his introduction to Buddhism. He is into like mystic Christianity and stuff like that. When we leave, my dad was a very rational man, business, science. Was not interested in religion, spirituality. We're walking down the hallway, and I'm kind of like, oh God, it didn't happen like that. My dad turns to me and said, no, my mother said first. She turned to me and she said, if there's such a thing as a Buddha, he's it. What? My dad goes, yeah. He's a genius. For science, religion, rational mind, genius is like a Buddha, right? My brother said, yeah, you know what? When he grabbed my beard and pulled me to his face, his face completely transformed, and it was the face of Jesus. So much for my insight, right? And that's how Lama, I'm serious. That's what I meant by I don't know. I think the quality of his being allowed them to have those experiences, of course. But I also think that he opened the door just a little bit. When you saw Lama Yeshe, it was very, very, very hard, if you were around him a little bit, very hard to say, man, that might be a Buddha. Wasn't it? Do you know what I mean? Right? Pamela?
Very hard to say.
It's very hard to not say. Yeah. Wow, that must be what a Buddha is. So the example, he was showing people. Now, so that's that story, okay? That's why the mother's there. Now, so Lama's not in that picture. I am, and then my wife Pam's left. In the middle is Nick Rinpoche. Then a monk named Thupten Sering, and then this is Lama Lundrup. Okay, not closest to me. Now, why this picture is there is another story, of course. One of my duties at Kopan was to work with Lama Lundrup, who's I call him the abbot, but I don't know, technically Lama Yeshe, I guess, was the abbot. But anyway, Lama Lundrup was like the headmaster. He was there all year. He was in charge when Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche weren't there. In fact, even when Lama Zopa Rinpoche was there, Lama Lundrup and Lama Yeshe wasn't, Lama Lundrup would be in charge. I think you call him headmaster. Well, so there's me and Lama Lundrup, there's another monk who's the manager, Lama Pasang. And Lama Yeshe asked me to look after the money with Lama Lundrup and Lama Pasang. And then he, because you need to, and then keep some books. I want you to keep books. Now, mind you, our greatest excitement in those days was when they created the calculator, and someone smuggled one back for us. I finally got one with the paper, No, I mean those little ones. They didn't exist when I started this. So that was exciting, calculators. Anyway, So Lama Yeshe, besides being, in addition, or as part of his great qualities, unbelievable quality of practicality. Lama Zopa Rinpoche, people used to complain at the courses because Rinpoche's way of teaching and speaking was something that's hard for people. Now, actually, Rinpoche spoke great English. And yet, but when he taught somehow, maybe the karma of our karma as listeners, we couldn't, and I was managing these courses after a while with my wife. And so everyone would be coming to us because the food was bad. They couldn't wash. They had this new experience. They had fleas all over them, right? This is tough conditions. And so people would come to us and complain. They didn't realize it was their minds, of course. It was somehow the conditions. And one of the things they would say is, "Wow, you gotta teach Lama Zopa how to speak English. You're an English teacher, right? And you gotta teach him he doesn't know how to speak English, and you gotta tell him, to make an outline when he comes, because he's all over the place, and he keeps repeating himself over and over, and then he's doing this coughing thing, and they're coming at us, and he's just not in touch with us." And so I remember going to Lama Yeshe, and then Lama Yeshe would come to the teaching. And he said, you people, do you know how much effort Rinpoche is making to come down to your level? He says, if you knew his qualities, you wouldn't be saying what you're saying. Of course, Rinpoche would keep hidden, right? Still, he'd hide his qualities. Okay. But my point is that Rinpoche was very, very much he still really is, but manifesting the aspect of the really perfect yogi. In those days especially, he was very, right? He was very, very much the meditator. Try to talk about money. You wouldn't talk about money. You wouldn't talk about practical things, not in particular, unless he brought it up. That was Lama Yeshe was so, Lama Yeshe wanted flower gardens. Lama Yeshe wanted a vegetable garden. Another one of his projects, we made a methane gas generator. This is 1980 or something. Solar panels. We put solar panels in. All these what you call harebrained ideas, right? But Lama Yeshe was so self-sufficiency. So he was really pushing us to be self-sufficient. And that's why by the end of monsoon, we'd be running out of money. And of course, no internet, so it was telegrams. Please send money. And he wouldn't send it. Tough love. Seriously. He would send it eventually. But because he was trying to help us understand, you better be self-sufficient. We got cows and buffaloes for milk. We had those eggs, the chickens for the eggs. We started developing the garden, a vegetable garden. He was helping us to try and generate some income-generating business, like ginseng, ginger beer, different things. So he was very, 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 besides being an exalted Buddhist master, he's so practical, like His Holiness. So I had this job of trying to work out the money keep the finances, because Lama was just so radical. He was so intense. One of the things I want to share with you, I was going to share this earlier. My relation to Lama, you could see how he was a very, very charismatic and joyous person. And he just made you smile. That was my relationship with him for 2 months. Call it the honeymoon stage. Lama Yeshe was extremely wrathful as well. Lama Yeshe was wrathful. Chogyam Trungpa has described he says the guru is like a freight train, just keeps going, doesn't care. Just going to benefit sentient beings. They don't care how you're feeling, if it's benefit, as long as it's benefiting. I often have many emotional problems. If I went to Rinpoche or Lama, I never got soothed. Lama Yeshe once told me, you know what we do in Tibet? When the children cry, what do? We beat them more. it says beat, it doesn't mean... Because, that's not a solution. So their kids don't actually cry that much. I'm not saying they're abused. That's not the point. It's just that's not useful. Okay? And Lama was terrifying. We'd be sitting on the steps of the Gompa, and we could hear Lamas, because you could hear him coming downstairs. Because you know what he wore? Those they're not clogs, they're, they were flip-flops, but he had the ones with the little massage the feet kind of thing, with little bubbles in them or something. But they were made of wood, the bottom part, and you could hear them clomp, clop, clop, coming in. And the monks would run. I'm serious, they would run. Because you're so... And the other thing about Lama Yeshe is, really, he was only about... I think he was shorter than me. You would never, ever, ever know that, would you? He towered. I mean, he really could change his shape, seemed like. Intimidating. I don't know how he did it. So, one of the jobs here was about the finances, because it's Dharma money. This is money that's often earned from the meditation course, so it's from the Dharma. And so I was taught, old school, how incredibly sacred, you could say, that money is. You don't use it to make profit. You don't use it to buy nice clothes. It has to go to supporting the monks in a very modest way. And one time we were doing puja, ceremony in the Gompa, and it was only myself and maybe 5, 6, 7 Westerners, and it was the monks. We always had 85 monks, by the way. I don't know why. They'd come, they'd go, we lose some, we gain some. It was always 85. I always said 83, but my wife swears it's 85. And Lama was standing. We're standing up on top of the Gompa one day, not too long before he passed away. And behind Kopan are these hills. And he went like this. He said, "I want 1,000 monks." Like that. He waved his arm. And when he did that, it's like a little curtain opened for a moment. And if you see pictures of Sera Monastery or Ganden, how they're built along the hills, all these monks resident. He said, "I want 1,000 monks." And so I just saw that. So when I was there 3 years ago, I went with Lama Oso. I was standing on the same, that Gompa was gone, but I was standing on top there, and all of a sudden it hit me. I remembered standing there with Lama, and now realizing there were 800 monks and nuns. So that's how he was. I get chills again. Well, you need 200 more to fit. But I thought, oh my God, Lama was right. Did it. But one time we're in doing the ceremony in puja, and Lama stood up, and he was just so, like he would be, so, what's that word? Not intimidating, but so, terrifying. You don't know what is going on. He's going to pick on me or what. He goes over. He's walking around. And he's walking. This look on his face. There's like no BS. He's walking. And everyone, all the young monks are, doing the, And all of a sudden, I have to explain to you this out of context. And I want to give you the context. Because sometimes Lama's behavior was hard to understand. And I don't want you to think that it was abusive or violent. You got to understand it had to do, his motivation was so pure, and the relationship with that student. Nothing stops a freight train. Okay? He doesn't care what people think, as long as it benefits. I mean, he cares so that it benefits, right? Lama went to the gay parade. He always liked going to the gay parade when he was here. And he'd go in lay clothes. And he would dress really kind of strangely. I mean, color coordinated. So he's heading off the gay parade with Oa, who's a gay friend of ours, and he had his purse. Those days, and Oa's going, you can't. Oh no, John Schwartz. He was going with John Schwartz, maybe Oa too. And John Schwartz goes, you can't go like that because his pants are really tight. He dressed as. I mean, how did he know that? He dressed very, we could say, effeminately. His purse and stuff. John Schwartz, you can't go like this. Why not? Well, Lama, you look kind of, He says, so what? Let's go. Off he went. So we're in this puja. This is back to Nepal. In this puja, he's strolling around. He's doing like that Molly you saw. He's doing his one. And all of a sudden, were you there? You hear this whap, and then whap again. And there's this young monk. I know who he was. Lama's hitting him with his Molly, his rosary. And then like a third time, whap, and the beads flew everywhere. And there was one, it's pretty intense. Well, the context was you didn't know was that monk, he was about 13, 14, 15, was in charge of the temple. And he was a very lazy monk. And he just he left the screen door, the windows open, but you could climb, anything to climb, because they were very low. And just lazy, fell asleep or something. And some people came in and stole the money from the offering box. Another time, same thing, the dogs came in and ate the ritual cakes on the altar. I mean, I really believe, I didn't like it, but I understood what Lama was doing. The karma from, that, allowing those, because now they got the karma of the poor thieves who stole Dharma money. So, was it a way for Lama to help this young monk purify? That's how I see it. I don't know from clairvoyance or anything, but it makes sense because I trusted Lama so much. He didn't do it out of anger. Okay. Now, one woman was in there, a visitor, and she freaked out because she wouldn't understand the context. And then Lama called her up. I don't know how he knew. Called her up to his room, invited her for tea, and explained to her. And she was okay after that. Because he didn't want her leaving with some wrong idea. And speaking about tea, not this tea. Speaking about tea, this is a small little thing. Lama loved beautiful things. So he'd come back from his travels, and he'd have these, he loved beautiful teapots, china, porcelain, and things like that. Or beautiful glass crystal bowls. And you go, God, this is a Lama? What's he doing? And he sometimes his Zen, the shawl, sometimes he'd get one made out of cashmere. So it seemed extravagant. But the interesting thing is he would bring these things and he'd show them off to me. Look what I got, And he said to me, he was drinking tea. He looked at me and says, you don't even know how to make a cup of tea. He said, you people don't know how to make a cup of tea. What was he saying? Not just me. He said, you people don't even know how to make a cup of tea. He had beautiful, some Earl Grey, and you know what he meant was that the pleasure he got from the tea was not the same I got, because he transformed it, right? It was just all nectar to him. And I think that what he meant was, we have such low awareness that when we make a cup of tea, how aware are we when we're making a cup of tea? Just make it, right? But for him, it all becomes transformed. Visualizing it in the nectar, transforming it. Now, when I say this, we do it ritually or we do it mechanically. For those masters, they just do it. It's real. I don't think it quite looks like how we read in our ceremonies, Om Ahum and all these kinds of things. I don't think I think it's similar, but it's not exactly. It's I think they see it differently. And the only way they can describe it is Om is white and red, Ah is red, and you see it like that. But there's something happening transformative in that moment for them. I think that's what he meant. You don't even know how to make a cup of tea. Okay? So Lama was very wrathful with it. Do you need a break?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, you only got 3 minutes. No, I know. Whatever you need. I'm sorry. I'm just, it's my blah blah. I'll just talk. So we will, just a few minutes. Can't lose track of time because I haven't even started yet.
Go overtime.
Yeah, we can go overtime.
Well, there's a few very important things to say about Lama that I have to get out. I get distracted because one thing leads to the other.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Monty?
There was a when Lama Yeshe's first visit to the United States, 1974. There was a woman in Indiana. Not a Buddhist, nothing, just one of our ordinary beings. She was sorry. It must have been super bizarre. She was sitting at home one day, and she was sitting in her living room. The television was off. And on her television appeared Lama Yeshe. Go figure. Television was on. Say she was hallucinating, whatever. She didn't know who he was. Never seen a picture of him. Didn't have. I mean, it freaked her out. And a couple of days later, I don't know if it was the next day or I think maybe the next day, she's walking. This is in Indiana, of all places. The reason Indiana was because this Holy Dalai Lama's brother lived in Indiana. I mean, that's in hindsight why Indiana. And she's walking through town and saw a poster that Lama Yeshe would be teaching and be coming to Indiana. That's just one of the small things about Lama. So that's, without even knowing she was a student of Lama's, Lama appeared. Okay? So that's, and then the people today. I've met many people say, my main teacher is Lama Yeshe. So that's pretty phenomenal. Back to this. Okay, now I got to really speed up. So so we used to do this money meeting thing. That's what we called it, money meeting. And during the slow months, it was maybe once or twice a week. But when they had the course on, when Lama was there, we were pretty busy. It was every night. And so Lama had his fingers into everything. Okay, and so one of these nights, that's what I'm showing you. You see this table here, okay? So one night, Lama Lundrup and I just can't tell which side of the table this is. I don't know. Anyway, Lama Lundrup and I, we'd sit on one side, away from. So, example would be, we're sitting here, tables here, and the door, one door only, tiny little office. Door's right there. Lama Pasang, the manager, would be sitting here, and he'd be taking out these dirty receipts and rupee notes, and I'd be trying to balance the books, and there'd be 72 rupees missing, which is about 20 cents or something those days. No, 70 was maybe then it was 8 rupees. 80 rupees. What was it? 8? No, it wasn't 8. 10 to the dollar then? It changed because India stayed sort of the same and Nepal kept. Anyway, it was a couple dollars, But it seemed like a lot. 72 rupees or whatever, right? It seems like a lot. And they go, oh, yeah, no, I had tea with the rickshaw driver. That's 3 rupees. And then my thinking is, I'll say my thinking, and he didn't speak fluent English by any means. And then he said, oh, yeah, we got the spare tire fixed. That was. And I was like, oh my God, I've been there for hours because I had already got it from Lama. We had to balance the books. So anyway, and then we had this huge miscellaneous section. Huge. So one night, this wasn't unusual, but so Lama Pasang is saying, and then that door over there all of a sudden opens. It's at 9:30 at night, right? 9 o'clock at night. You're tired. This is during November course. There's 200 Westerners who are struggling to with this course, and it was not easy. Food, the lodging, the fleas, the whole thing, the dirt, and so all of a sudden the door opens, and it's Lama Yeshe, and like I said, he's filling the whole door up. It's like, I don't know, John Wayne coming into or something. And we go, and I'm going, oh no, because this happened before. And Lama Pasang, Lama Yeshe comes and says, so, he's always like, and he's wrathful. Because Lama Lundrup, Lama Pasang, that's, it wasn't so, it's his manifestation. Maybe stern would be a better way to put it, stern. And he comes walking in and has such presence to him. And then Lama Pasang, I remember this night, was so clever. He snuck out behind him and went out the door. He knew what was coming. Lama sits down. And so Lama Lindrup and I are pinned in because we're behind this table. We can't get out. So then Lama Yeshe starts. And the first thing he does, there's like a file cabinet. He starts going through this file cabinet. Not really file cabinet. Yeah, it was. But and there's this rant. I mean, this is Nepal. I mean, in this third world. And there's like random pieces of paper in there. And he pulls one out. And it's like a receipt for, electrician that might have tried to put some... He says, what's this? It's like, who the heck knows? It's like 3 years old or something like, who put it in there? What? Why are you paying 100 rupees? It's too much. No context, by the way. He just be too much because you couldn't be right? And he's going through these receipts. I go, oh no, and then he sits down and he looks at me and he said something like this. I mean, this was one of the questions. So he said, how much did we spend on milk last year? And I'd say and of course I was very frightened to say I don't know. But I had no choice. And he said, what? And he goes, my American boy, you American? You don't know? What kind of American? You went to college? What kind? I didn't go to college. Even I know that. Why don't you know it? So, okay, Lama. He says, next time when I come back, you better have a total. This went on. Then, he said, how many lettuce we bought? How many? So I started doing the books, like making more and more categories, I didn't, so it wasn't just the amount, now I had to keep the quantity. So next year he comes back, this is true, and so that point, we're pinned in there, so he's pinned in there, and I had done the previous year, and so I had done how much, I kept totals, right? I had the total for the milk, and I was so proud. And I gave him the total, and he said, no, how many kilos? True story, this is true. I didn't keep track of the kilos long. I couldn't say like that. You couldn't say, I didn't keep track of the kilos long. And some students had the courage to maybe talk back. I didn't have that. I could never talk back like that, defend myself. Yeah, if I did, he'd just get more wrathful. So we're back there, and starts going through how many lettuce, how much you spend, and then while you're not answering, he's going, what kind of American student are you? Kind of berating me, putting me down, and like that. That was his relationship with me. Very intense, very critical, very in my face. Okay? Remember what Trungpa Rinpoche said? The other thing about the freight train? The other thing he said? The purpose of the guru is to insult you. Remember that. Purpose of the guru is... Why? Because he's breaking your ego. That's his job. You're in agreement. By the way, if you're not in agreement with the Lama, he won't do that. But I was romantic. My guru, I'll do it. Yes. And then all of a sudden, I didn't know what I was getting into. Because this is a freight train, and he's critical. So we're back there behind this thing, and it's going on for hours. And I had a fever that night. Remember, I had a low fever, and it was raining, and I hadn't eaten. And usually the kitchen would close. I mean, I could go get food, if I could go back in the kitchen. I didn't have to, all the Westerners eaten long hours ago, and I'd missed dinner. But I felt confident if I get back to the kitchen before 10, the cook, Concha, would still be back there. I could find something. It gets 10, 10:30, 11, 11:30. And this went on for about 2-3 hours. I'm just dying back there. And Lama Lush is so patient. He's like, loss, so obedient. And so Lama's is really hammering us. But Lama Lush loves it because he's a practitioner. So finally, I'm just hanging on. Of course, I couldn't say, Lama, can I go? I have a fever. You can't. It would have been like, no chance. Setting yourself up. I should have known when I had that breakfast with him, leaving Nepal. I should have known then. That was the first sign. Okay? Lama, should I come back? I never tell my students what to do. It never stopped after that. So, So we're back there, finally about 11:30. He says, "Okay, I think finished for now." We had a little shop next door. He says, "Tomorrow morning we do the shop."
Oh.
True. And he says, I don't know what time we start. Maybe 7 o'clock. He says, "I'll come get you, or I'll send someone to get you." He left. I went out. It's true. I mean, I'm not afraid to admit. I started crying. I just couldn't. It was just too much. I was just so stressed. And then I noticed the kitchen light was still on. So I thought I better go get something to eat. See if Concha has something. So I went back, went to the back entrance, and I go in and I just freeze. There's Lama Yeshe with Concha. Yes, well, there was some spinach soup. I just wanted something, and Lama looks at me and goes, "Something?" Like that. I'm way over there. "Something?" And I said, "Oh no, I just went looking for something to eat." He says, "You're looking for something to eat?" He says, "Or are you looking for 'I love you'? You need to hear 'I love you'?" But he said kind of tense. Like obviously I did. But he wasn't like telling me, but you need to, like, you have this need to hear it. That's Lama style with me. So I don't know. So he was intense. He would come down. I was became like the monks. I'd run the other way. I had to do his appointments many times, letters with him, and I would stand outside his door. So I had to go in and do some work with him. Or he'd call, "Come on, let's do letters," or "You come up," and I'd stand outside because I'd just be like, "I don't want to go in there. It's too intense." And it would be, and it's like going on and on and on. And one of the things he said about me, publicly to people, "He's so lazy. He's lazy. You're lazy." Like this word, lazy. And I had no idea what he's talking. I mean, honestly, I think, now I understand lazy. But then I didn't quite understand because I was working long hours, working hard, and in a way I wasn't motivated, so maybe that's what he meant, It's like constantly, this is hard. And in fact, but he had this thing, he wouldn't let it go there. He also thought, well, I'll do this publicly to Karuna. One time he was walking through the courtyard. Remember the courtyard between the kitchen, outside the office there? So we're all sitting there, and that's often where you eat your lunch, because there weren't tables and chairs in those days. Eventually there was a dining room and stuff like that. But so I was out there and eating my lunch, and Lama came walking down. And of course you stand up, right? That's the protocol. Stand up. So he'd stand up, and I always wore a shawl. It was my thing, like it wasn't cashmere, but like that kind of shawl, And I mean, many people did. It wasn't that unusual. And Lama comes walking through, and there's about a dozen people, and they all stand up. And you got to remember, their relationship with Lama is he's so sweet. He's so funny. He's so nice. So then he's walking through, and then he goes, look, everybody look. And everyone's looking at him, wondering what's going on. And he takes his zen, his shawl, and he kind of puts it half over his head, and he said, "This is Karuna." And he starts moping around like the worst characterization of somebody. He's moping. See, everyone, isn't it? And they all start laughing, of course, because it was funny from their angle. He said, "See, so lazy. He's so depressed." I was kind of depressed, but who wouldn't be, And so then he's just laughing, and then he goes on, and he walks. And when he laughed, he'd almost cry sometimes, right? He'd laugh, he's laughing so hard. It was one of those kind of things. So there I was, and I, left to my own device. That's how very common. So one time, so that was that. So, that's me sitting there. One time. So I'd say it's publicly too. So when I would go to teachings with Lama, when Lama was teaching, this is in the tent. We called the tent. It's not there anymore. And it was the buffalo stable. Water buffalo and cows. And then for the course, they'd move the cows out to the other side of the hill, And they put these mats down. And they put these mats for walls, but there'd be like space for... And this is December. I mean, it's cold. And the floor was all like bumpy, and no wonder there were a lot of fleas in there, right? And it had corrugated iron roof, so if it rained, it was super noisy. Anyway, we loved it. Anyway, great memories, right? I mean, that's where it all happened. So I was at teachings one time, and when Lama would teach, I'd often sit behind a pillar, so he wouldn't see me. Didn't work. Because does anyone else feel that kind of shyness that if you get pointed out in a crowd? I think most of us do, right? So, and anyway, if you pointed me out, I was going to say something that was harsh. So I remember one teaching, I think it was Shidamani Tara commentary, or it was Uttanamshe commentary, I can't remember. And he said something like, in the teaching. And you're usually, I don't know about you, but, it might be, I wasn't sleeping or anything like that, but, not probably that attentive. This is in the evening. And, I was working, doing all the things, trying to go to the teaching at the same time. And then he said, out of nowhere, he said, "Isn't that not right, Karuna?" No, like he did this triple negative thing. And I said, yes. Because I did this calculation in my head that, with all the negatives but it sounded totally wrong. Grammatically, it was correct. But what does he do? He bursts out laughing at the top, and everyone's laughing. And he's going, "My English teacher doesn't even know English. Can you believe my English?" And he starts taking this scarf, and throwing it at me. I mean, I was pretty far away. Throwing it, taking the apple and the fruit, throwing it. Can you believe my English teacher doesn't even know English? He said, "What's he saying?" And he starts going, "What's he saying?" He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's not listening. Like that, just for what felt like an eternity. It was probably like 20 seconds, right? No, it was a little more than 20 seconds. And of course, it's totally humiliated. And so he continues. This is towards the end of the talk. And then he, dedication, and then before he got off the throne, and I was under the ground at that point, he said, "Well, let's see if Karuna knows the answer tomorrow." Yeah, I was so much anxiety. I got to come to this again tomorrow, and he's going to point me out. And I have no idea what the answer is now. I don't know. No clue. And I remember... So remember, this is within the idea of laziness, right? So I think even he said, "You're lazy. You don't know English. You're lazy," like that again. Everyone's laughing. It's like they didn't get it. It was painful, and so that night I didn't sleep well. The next day I'm thinking all day. I'm really anxious. What am I going to say? What am I going to say? I don't know. Anxious. I remember I was in your house. I was staying in your house in those days. And I was down below. And Pam was staying up above because we weren't married yet. And I'm lying on my bed, and it's like a half hour before. And I finally got it. I could see my spinning mind. The worried mind. Like that really obsessed, worried, scared, what is, on and on. And it was like, I got it. And I could see it objectively. And I thought, I don't need to identify with that. It's the first time. And not all the anxiety left, but, I had so much that two-thirds left. And so we went up to the teaching that night, and I'm, of course, very anxious. When's he going to point me out again? When is he going to do this thing? Because he did it in a lot of teachings, not as radically as he did that night, but often he would point out my faults. And so going on, he's teaching. Doesn't say anything. Dedication. Oh, I made it. And then he's about to get, he's, okay. You know what he said? it looks like Karuna got the right answer. Still got chills. Yeah. See, so that's unbelievable. His quality. So it was about, and I finally learned, it probably took 4 or 5 years. I didn't know what laziness was until that night. He beat me about laziness. Now, if he hadn't, I probably may have wanted to figure it out in this life. But through his, so you see, we can't judge. I mean, I have total trust in his wrathfulness. But I didn't know, I can't say I did at the time. It just hurt. You know, I'm telling you, I cry, I want to leave. When you're up at Koh Phan, there's a road, you can see, it's kind of like a road that goes all the way to the airport. See the airport out there, like 4 or 5 miles away. I used to visualize running as fast as I could down that road, right to the airport. I told Peter Kedge that, a friend of another old student. He said, "Wait a minute, no, you could. I did the same thing." He used to berate Peter Kedge too. So let's jump ahead. That's significant, right? So now, this is going to take a few minutes. So if you have to leave, then you can leave. But I want to end with this. Maybe not end, but I'm trying to think what the date was. Yeah. So this is December. Late December 1983. It's after the meditation course. And Lama felt very sick. And people didn't know it. We weren't allowed to tell people. Because he wouldn't want that, to disturb. He was very sick at this. And this is his last talk ever. And, sorry. So, right. So he was very sick, and I knew it. It's kind of why I was sitting there, probably, because I was bringing him down from his room to the lecture, which is not uncommon. Sometimes the meditation course leader does. Someone. And at that time I did. And his last talk, which is available probably through the archive, definitely through the archive, he spoke, what happened was, Lama Yeshe was very efficient, like the Dalai Lama. He didn't, you show up on time, it's a 2-hour talk, he pretty much end on time. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche is like, no time. And so, Lama was pretty punctual, efficient that way. So the schedule for 2 hours, and he spoke. So it was 2-hour mark, a little over 2 hours, in fact. And he said, "Okay, now let's take a pee-pee break." And I stood up from there, and people were kind of getting up. I said, "Lama, I think we should finish." So he was really sick. I mean, this was the beginning of his manifesting his death. And he said, "Sit down and shut up." Sit down and shut up. Like that. I mean, it looked. No one could hear him say that. It just it was me. And, it was typical for me. So I sat down. He went on for, another 2 hours, hour and a half. Now, there's stories of Milarepa. Do you remember stories of Milarepa when he was dying and he was very sick? And Gampopa, I think, asked to take on his sickness. And it was Rinpoche gave Gampopa, I don't remember. And so Milarepa said, no, you couldn't handle it. And no, I really want to take on. So he transferred the sickness to Gampopa or Rinpoche. And he was just writhing in pain, like dying from the pain. And Miller said, "Oh, that's only a little bit of it." And they took it back. So we don't know, Lama Yeshe had a bad heart. He was diagnosed in 1974, I believe, when he came from the first trip. And he had an enlarged heart and was given 3 months to live. and they told him, you have to do this, probably bypass surgery, I don't know what it was, or you're going to die in 3 months. He didn't do the surgery. Okay, so now he's having some experience. And later, I don't know, that night or the next morning, they called me, Lama Lindra or someone called me up, and I went up to, and Lama looked like maybe he had a stroke or something. He couldn't really talk. I don't think he had a stroke, by the way, but it could have been. I think it was just he was so sick. And so all that day we're trying to decide well, I wasn't, but Lama Zopa, and they're talking a little bit with me, but most Lama Zopa, Rinpoche, and Lama Lindra, what to do. Now the healthcare in Nepal is still bad, but it was really bad then. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche was doing observations, checking what to do, and it came out best that Lama go to the hospital in Delhi. And of course this was all kept very quiet because it was our style. Lama style didn't want to panic students or anybody. Now this whole experience I think I wrote about, it should be in Lama's biography, and all I can tell you is, again, around Lama Yeshe, it was some sort of always very, very unusual. So I think it was Rinpoche or Lama Lindra, I don't know, who said to me, so it's getting into the evening, and decided to leave, and I think Pam went and got tickets. And when she got tickets, Lama Lindra said, you go to me, you go with Lama. So it's just myself and one of his longtime Sherpa attendants, Tuta Mullen, who lives in Santa Cruz. And so it's like, one of my regrets is I wasn't a more competent person. Some people are like good managers. They can, for me it was like, oh God, what am I going to, it's like, this is hard. And then I asked Rinpoche, should we go straight to the hospital or go to the center? There's a center in there. And he said, you decide when you get there. So we go, Lama's leaving Kopan. And there's all these bad signs. People are holding candles, and Rinpoche asked me, make sure no one's holding red flowers, because red flowers are very inauspicious around sick people. It was dark. I couldn't tell who held red flowers, but the candles, Rinpoche would mention it years later to me, looked very macabre, because people's faces, and it was very. And then we had a taxi, and I was in the taxi there were two taxis. I was with Lama, and the taxi drove off the road, and we got it was a very bad road anyway. It's dirt road, but and Lama had to get out, and you could tell he was in so much pain or something. His subjective experience I can't say, but he was in so much pain, and then whatever. And we get to the airport, and then we're so late that we have to walk out to the plane. Maybe everyone had to, but we were last. There was no one around. Everyone was on the plane, and Lama's walking with his arm on me and his arm on Tuta Mullen. And we're walking. Take 10 steps. You go. And I thought, like, is having a heart attack, or something. What's going on? He looked back and then take a big breath, and then I don't know what was happening then physically. And then we'd walk another 10, 15 things. So finally get up on the plane, and some people are sitting, Indians I believe, but not Western, were sitting in our seats. They left the middle one open. And I start to argue with them, right? Like, get out of our seats. And Lama's going, no, don't. Can you believe this? I don't know how much agony, but he, only thinking of others. So he sat in the middle of these two, and eventually they moved, so I did sit next to Lama, I remember. And we get into Delhi, fly into Delhi, and the director of the Delhi Center picks us up, Trisha, and we're driving, and Lama is stopping every 5 minutes and throwing up. And this is at midnight in Delhi. Just dogs are out there, and it's just so macabre. Again, the lighting, the dust, and this is wintertime. And so I have to decide. And he's throwing up so much. I decided we got to go to the hospital. And Rinpoche had checked which hospital, so we went to that hospital. So we go in and bring Lama in, and it's pretty busy, even though it's the middle of the night. And they're not coming to Lama's aid right away. And we're sitting there, and he was sitting on a gurney, and they rolled this woman out who was near death. And it was like, oh my God, this is like just too bizarre. And then the doctor comes out and just checks him in the waiting room with this dead lady next to him and says, oh, he has heartburn, and gave him antacid. So okay, so we go to the hotel. So we went stayed at a hotel. Go to the hotel and checking in. Lama's throwing up in the flower little, in the lobby thing, And then we go up and get to the room, and Lama's like suffocating, because I don't from this condition, and then but the windows don't open, and there's no air conditioning. So I was able to open the window. The window opened a crack, and the whole night he stood at the crack like this, and it was a very long night. And do you know, if you've taken drugs and stuff like that, I don't know if you have, but I took a lot of them, and all I can say is, or another way of putting it, do you know that story, Buddha's life story, when he's under the Bodhi tree and he's being attacked by all the Maras, and you see all these arrows, and that's what our experience, it was so, so bizarre. Even I could feel it. I felt suffocating in there. I felt like Lama was being attacked. And maybe it's just my hallucination, fantasy, but it was just like, but it seemed like Lama was even showing that, having a problem breathing, it's a little window, and so it was a very, very long night, and then the next day we went to the other hospital. Lama was admitted and was there for, I can't remember, 3 weeks or a month. Was in intensive care for a week, and then into a room. And in the room, the toilet kept overflowing, all this crap started going on the floor. When he was in intensive care, we had to bribe the doctors so that someone could stay in there with him. It wasn't me, because I was the entitled Westerner. I went back to the hotel at night, and Tutamulam or Pemba slept on the floor, because that's the only way you get really good, make sure that he was taken care of. And I don't think, probably that doesn't happen these days, but that was 1980, end of 1983. And so that went on for a long time. It was just the three of us. And Lama insisted couldn't tell anyone where he was. So students all over the world are, of course, concerned and wondering and things like that. And I couldn't say. And I honestly have to tell you, I had to lie sometimes. Even though we're not supposed to lie. But for the guru, you can. Okay? And also as bodhisattva, you can if it's... Anyway, everyone knows those vows. Okay, you might have to break that. You might have to lie as a bodhisattva, for example. So, so we're in there for 3 weeks, and the story is too long. What we did there, 3 weeks a month. Then we. But I want to tell you one thing. So when Lama was still in the hospital, and it was so intense and so active that I never had really much thought to think about the ramifications. What's really going on here? I knew he was really sick, but then I went back to. We had a hotel room that we were all, the three of us in our shifts would go back to off shift. We'd go back to this hotel not far from the hospital, and I had the night. I was back there at night again, the entitled Westerner, so to speak. I left my shift at 6 or 7 or 8 in the evening, and I walked back to the hotel. I got in the room, and it hit me. Lama's dying. I couldn't have that thought when I was trying to. You can't do that. Because you become ineffective. So I cry. It's like the shock just hit me. I finally had time for it to hit me, and it did. I was probably really tired too. And there's a few weeks into this ordeal, and I went back the next morning for my shift. And Tutamulam, I remember, often we'd feed Lama, because he was sitting on the chair, not in bed. And often what would happen is Lama would pass. It seemed like he passed out, but he'd still be sitting there, and he might just suddenly close his eyes, and then he's gone. And it might be a minute, 10 minutes, not usually longer than 15, 20 minutes. So when I walked in, Lama was in that state. And Tutamulam was holding this bowl of, porridge or something with a spoon. I can remember vividly walking, and he's holding it. And Lama's like... So I came in, and I was going to take the bowl and spoon, and Lama opens it. It's like those movies anyway, he opens his eyes and looks at me. And I just come back. I was so down from all this crying. You know how it is when you cry a lot? You feel, yeah. So I came in, and Lama looked at me, and he grabbed me right here. And he pulled me down really strong. Pulled me right down to his face. And he said, "Do you trust?" He's looking at me. "Do you trust?" And I was like, oh, he's holding his fist up. That's right. He's holding his fist right here next to my face. "Do you trust?" "Well, of course I trust." No. I said, yeah. And he burst out laughing. And he says, "Wait till my students hear that your guru almost beat you up." So that thing about "do you trust?" And I, by the way, because I was crying so much about his dying, meaning a number of things to me. It meant, what? You don't think I have control? I know what I'm doing. He told me when we moved out to the farm. So we were there a month, and then we moved out to a farmhouse. We were trying to get him healthy enough to fly here to have heart surgery. And when we're out, so we moved out to this farmhouse. At the farmhouse, he said, "You see, it shows you I know something. Those doctors told me I could live 3 months. See, I tell you, I know something more than them." Again, that's what I meant. He opened the window a little bit just to validate, his powers, I guess you'd say, or his attainments. Normally that doesn't happen, right? It doesn't. Not very. I mean, high lamas, they do let you know certain ones, and that's what Lama will do. Maybe only to me. Maybe only with me. I don't know. So, and by the way, before we moved out to that house, Rinpoche had arrived. Lama Zopa had arrived in Delhi, and he said, "Oh, Karuna, go out to the farmhouse and check if there are red flowers." So Rinpoche. So I went out to the farmhouse, and you won't believe it. A hedge surrounded the whole house, kind of a fence hedge. What was it? Rhododendrons. In bloom. I don't know why they bloom in winter, I guess. Anyway, I couldn't pick all the flowers off. We just had to go out there. So another not very auspicious sign. So that was an ordeal. So we were out there for a month, and then Rinpoche was with us. Myself, Rinpoche, Tutamolam, and Pemba. Pemba? Pemba, you always say Pemba. And people wanted to know, "Where's Lama? Can I see Lama?" "I don't know where he is." "Yes, you know where he is. You're staying. I heard you're staying with." "Yeah, but I don't know where he is." Blah blah. It's like uncomfortable. And this, I'm going to get to the end because this is okay. So, one student Lama said he wanted to see Massimo. He wanted to see Massimo. He said, "Oh, he'll be so sad if I don't see him," because obviously Lama knew he was going to pass away. And the observations were that if Lama Yeshe lived to New Year's Day, Tibetan New Year's Day, he'd live a long time. Okay, and that was whatever. I don't remember what month or day that New Year's Day, but it was somewhere, early February or something like that. March 3rd. Thank you. I should know that, right? So. But one of the people who came to visit Lama was one of his gurus, Geshe Rabten Rinpoche. And the day that Geshe Rabten came, I picked them up because we had a car and a driver. But then I went in, I didn't stay for lunch. I mean, I went into town and did shopping or something. I wasn't there for much of the visit. And so this is interesting. So now we're going to jump ahead. Well, I'll just put in so remember that story because I got to finish with that. What happened then? Lama eventually got him on a plane. And the night before we left, or night or two before, I thought I was going, obviously. And he said, "No, you go back to Kopan and you work." He always told me that. "You stay here." I didn't get to do retreats because I said, "You work." Pam and I are going to retreat in Dharamsala. We're going to go to His Holiness's teachings. Year after year, he'd say that. One year I came upstairs to his room, and there was like Pam had been, the empty teacups and the half-eaten cookies, all the crumbs are there and stuff like that. And then Lama looks at me and he's like, had been laughing, really having a good tea party. And there's like he said, "Yeah, Pam and I, we've just been discussing. We're going to go to Dharamsala. We're going to do retreat. And first we're going to go to His Holiness' teachings. He's teaching, I can't remember what he's teaching later, this. Then we're going to do this retreat for like maybe 6 weeks. We'll do retreat. And then His Holiness' teaching, it's going on, and it's setting me up. I didn't learn. A slow learner. This is like the 3rd year in a row they've been going. Everyone, a lot of people went. You probably went too. Wintertime, you go to Tushita for His Holiness' teachings. So it's kind of become an event. And so 3rd time or 4th time, I found they're sitting there, the same every year. And now we've got this teacups, all this thing, and my wife Pam's like kind of smiling, and they've been having a good time. And he's telling, he's going on and on about this, and I was such an idiot because I finally said he would never let me go, right? All the others. So I finally said, Lama, what about me? It's so pathetic. What about me, Lama? Of course. What does his face do? Scrunches up. I just gave him the worst news ever. And he looked at me and goes, you stay here and work. I hated work. I didn't like that. I wanted to do retreats, wanted to become a translator, all those things, maybe a monk, but that ended. But that was the study. You stay here and work. So I quit asking after that. Anyway, it ruined his day, obviously. So fast forward to Lama Yeshe. So when he sent me back to Nepal to Kopan, it was hard. But it was not unpredictable. I was really surprised in a sense, but in hindsight, it was predictable. So I wasn't with Lama when he passed away. We got him on the airplane. He could barely walk, but when we were at the airport, I started supporting him, and he pushed me away. And he walked perfectly because he felt they were watching him to see. It's possible. See if they see anyone really unhealthy, they won't let him on the plane. Flew to the States with Rinpoche and a couple other people. He took the Mullam with him, and and then myself and Pemba. We had to go back to Nepal. And on just before sunrise, on New Year's Day, in the hospital, ready for surgery, Lama died. To me, what it meant? Complete control over his death. I mean, so it's funny how they say if he lives to New Year's Day, he'll live a long time. It wasn't his plan. So just to conclude, so there's an important part that I have to tell Adele. Maybe she'll add to the biography. So for years after that, Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, number of times he said to me, "Oh, remember that day in Delhi when Geshe Rabten came for lunch?" And then Rinpoche would always say, "Oh, no, you weren't there. That's right." And then tell another time, he'd say it again. So remember that time? They didn't talk much. Remember that? Oh, no, you weren't there. It's one of those things, those funny things that these lamas do. So that happened a few times. Then about 3 years ago, Rinpoche did it again. And he brought up, he said, "Do you remember they didn't talk much?" And again, okay, you weren't there. Oh, that's right, you weren't there. And then he said to me, he told me this twice in the last couple of years. He said to me, "Well, the reason they didn't talk much is because Lama, Yeshe, and Geshe Rabten were at the same level of realization. And at their level of realization, they just communicate through the illusory body. Attaining the illusory body is a completion stage tantra practice, attainment. If you attain illusory body, you are going to attain Buddhahood. Likely in that very life, or in the bardo, or, it's just like stamp of approval. It's a very, very high level realization. So now, when Lama passed away, Rinpoche also wrote a short biography, very short, it was like 10-page biography of Lama, and that, he said Lama had attained, I think, 3rd level Bodhisattva Bhumi. Now, 1st level Bodhisattva, and be sure to ask Emily this, put her to the test when you take teachings from her. 1st level Bodhisattva, just an example, can manifest his body in 100 different forms, attain, and go to 100 different places. He could go to 100 Pure Lands, he or she, take teachings from 100 different Buddhas. That's just first level. Remember I said before, there's 10 levels. That first level, he or she can pass through walls. This is complete control over his elements, his body. Okay? Now, second level Bodhisattva can manifest his body in 1,000 different forms, right? So go 100, 1,000? Yeah. And third level, so I think the math, if I got it right, it's not that important. I think 10,000. Or is it 100,000? Whatever. 10,000, I think it is. Third level? So it's 100 times each time. So whatever. Let's just say 10,000 to be conservative. Can we do that? I should look it up. So, I mean, that's a lot of bodies, a lot of places. And it also tells about the other attainments that third level Bodhisattva. So if Lama had attained that, just that level, now years later, now that was when Lama Yeshe passed away in that biography. Rinpoche hadn't mentioned, as far as I remember, anything about attaining the illusory body. So Rinpoche is telling me this later. Why? I mean, it's a really direct reason why, for me at least. Remember Lama said, do you trust? He had already attained the illusory body. And then Rinpoche is telling me this because this is my personal opinion. Two reasons. One, you can still relate to Lama, and I do. I haven't stopped, I don't think. Relate to Lama Yeshe as your guru. I mean, Lama Yeshe, okay, that manifestation left. But the mind that inhabited that form is still there. So I had a picture here of Rilpa Rinpoche. Because I asked Rilpa Rinpoche, because I was feeling sad once about Lama, missing Lama. This was years later. And I said to him, well, you were a direct disciple of Pabonka Rinpoche. I said, how did you deal with, his passing away and separation? He kind of looked at me like it was a strange question. He said, Pabonka Rinpoche was Buddha. So Buddha's in all my gurus. And what he's saying is he didn't miss him. Buddha's manifesting for him. That manifestation changed, but that wouldn't be a big deal if you have lots of other manifestations you can relate to. Okay. The other reason I think Rinpoche mentioned it to me is that I have had some strange fortune to have a close relation with Lama Yeshe's incarnation, Osalhita, or Lama Osalhita. He's not a monk anymore. So we can still say Lama Osel. And Lama Osel's manifestation is pretty difficult for me. I mean, he's not manifesting as a monk, he's not manifesting as a Lama, he's not manifesting that he's even that interested in Buddhism, he's manifesting as a young, kind of like how we were. And Rinpoche has continually, and Rinpoche has validated for me twice when he was asked that he is the right incarnation. It wasn't a mistake. First of all, to make a mistake would say his Holiness Dalai Lama made a mistake. But he went on, so I'm just sharing it, and he said, it's unmistakable that Lama Yeshe attained Buddhahood. Definitely Buddha. So now just for you those who, this might help. So how I began to understand Osel is that it's not that he's the incarnation of Lama Yeshe. That's a wrong way to think of it. What he is one of the countless emanations of Lama Yeshe's Dharmakaya Buddha attainment mind. And there's many, maybe, there's countless in a sense. And due to our karma, we have that one that we identify that's been recognized. But there are many others, I'm sure. Okay? So I wanted to end with that because that takes us kind of full circle, right? And what it means is, I think it's important that I don't think of, now this is my personal conclusion. And I figured out with Osa, he's not my guru in that manifestation, because he's not manifesting as a guru. But when I relate to him as emanation of Buddha, I get it. It's helpful for me. That manifestation helps me. But it doesn't help me in the sense of a guru in the classical sense. Okay? But I can't rule him out any more than when we talk about those tantrikas. If we met some of those tantrikas, one of them lived on a poison island with a bunch of dogs. I don't know if he, I mean, dirty and disgusting, like someone like we meet a homeless person or something, and is highly realized Buddha manifest. So if I relate to also like that, and hold that respect, that maybe that's how that works for me. Does it mean that if he says do this, I do it? No. That's not my relationship with him. That's not the manifestation yet. Could change. And everyone has to make their own judgment about that. But if you can see, what they say, we should see everyone as a Buddha. That's not a joke. Okay? But the wisdom that comes from that, like if you see someone who is a criminal, say, really take a bad example, and you see him as Buddha, does that mean he's Buddha? Or you see him as Buddha? The Buddha's manifesting for you. That's very different. Buddha manifests for Lama Zopa in everybody, all the time, because Buddha's his guru. Buddha's his teacher. So I'm trying to work this out, and if you can, this is my own personal, not struggle, but what I work with. How do you work with this? Okay? So I hope that's helpful. I'm not saying I have any concluded. This is where I'm at today. Okay? So, wow, I just talked for 2.5 hours. Jeez, you guys are really polite. Do you have any questions? One question? Yeah. Is it a question?
How do we ever figure out the meaning of what the teacher's saying to us or doing to us, or why he's doing it, or for what purpose, or like that?
Wow.
How do we begin to figure it out? Because we can come up with anything.
I know. I don't have an answer to that other than to say that all zillions, exaggeration, many things, with both Rinpoche and Lama, but in this case, many things Lama said, did, right? I didn't make sense of it. Some of them I made sense of, an hour later, and some, honestly, I'm absolutely honest, some I make sense now when I go into retreat or do session. Wow, I mean, it's really amazing. So I don't think we have to worry about that too much, other than to have a sense of trust, a sense of, because if you're convinced that, like I feel convinced that Lama Zopa Rinpoche is highly, I don't know if he's Buddha or what, doesn't matter. So I'm convinced that I don't understand a lot of things he does or says to me, and I don't maybe agree with him or what, but I'm convinced that he's right, but I'm not there yet in that particular event. But hopefully I will be before I die. And it happens, right? So that's how I deal with it. I think the practice of the guru practice, you can't, in the Mahayana, particularly Tantra Yana, you cannot attain, in a Tantra in the Mantrayana or the Vajrayana, you actually can't really attain much without a strong guru-student relationship. And you may not understand everything they do, but you have that sense that this isn't really a Buddha, and don't understand everything, and some things that might be too hard I can't go along with right now, but I have the trust that they're doing it from the pure state of an enlightened being. That's just my personal...
Does the teacher have, from his side, the reason why he's doing it? Like, he knows what the reason is, and we're trying to figure it out? But, is there, like...
Yeah, it's non-conceptual. Yeah.
Reason,
yes, I think so. I think so. But the difference is, this is kind of complicated. How I see it is it's non-conceptual. It's non-conceptual in the sense that, is it conceptual that I reach for this tea and I want to have a taste of tea? Not really. Or is it conceptual? As I'm driving home, I have a strong sense of self-cherishing, right? Even if it's just driving, I have this dual sense I exist here. And for this I that exists here, I need to turn the wheel this way, I need to take a sip of tea, I need to put this foot in front of that foot. They don't have that. Now, just like I'm spontaneously serving myself, and I'm not saying that in a really critical way. It's just what is. I spontaneously serve myself every instant because I'm never free of that self-grasping. If you remove the self-grasping, then it's spontaneously serving of others. And there's no concept. Rinpoche, they never think, oh, I have to serve others. You know what I mean? It's plus also that awakening mind of bodhicitta is awakened because the self-grasping is gone or reduced.
So
That's how I see it anyway.
is it possible, for example, the teacher behaves like such and such because he's trying to show you a particular delusion that you have?
Could be.
And that we're not aware of and we're trying to get it. Like he has that purpose, like I want you to see your jealousy, or I want you to see
You know,
such and such.
You know what I think is useful for us to, you know what I think is useful for us to develop? Is, and it's going to sound weird, is not thinking about it. Not thinking about it doesn't mean you're not open to it. So, in the case of these high lamas, and we don't know if they're working on our nadis. We don't know. This is my belief. These high lamas, as Vajrayana practitioners, are actually working on, who knows, on our subtle bodies, our subtle energy, our chakras, our drops, or not. I mean, I believe they can work on all those levels. So I think our thinking about what is going on kind of can get in the way. It doesn't mean you won't understand. It's us. So it doesn't mean. So if you remove the conceptual, is he doing that? So I see my jealousy. If you remove that, you still will see. You actually will have insight. You will have. You don't need your thinking to have insight. In fact, the thinking kind of gets in the way. I believe.
I think you include the thinking, but from the teacher's side.
From the teacher's side.
Is that the lesson that is a particular lesson?
He's thinking about it?
No. From the teacher's side, is he showing us a particular lesson that he wants us to understand?
Could be. Could be. So many.
We never know what they're doing.
No. No. And so that's what the sense of trust is. When you say refuge, I think trust is the same as refuge. Mm-hmm. That's a sense of trust. What they talk about in terms of a Buddha or a high, they have, you know better than me, they have infinite skillful means, right? So one could be that, what you're describing, another one could be, so I don't know. I'm sure that's one of them. But I think there's even more. Because their only consideration is enlightening you. It's the only thing. So they're actually, who knows, maybe they're also helping you generate the imprints that are going to be your enlightenment. Now those imprints might have to start off with, you need a good rebirth next life. So, it's so layered. And I was in one of the courses, I don't know, actually I want to say her name. One nun was leading the course one year, and her style was very loose and open, with boundaries. So a lot of people, like Marcel, when I did the course, I remember Marcel saying, I heard some people were leaving in the hill, going down to the tea shop. If you go again, don't come back. Marcel, Dutch. And I think for this other nun, her style wasn't like that. So I remember talking to Lama Yeshe. I said, Lama, people are smoking beaties on the other side of the hill. I think some people are getting stoned. I heard some people went to town and got some pie and showered and, like that, right? And he looked at, and so I was thinking, again, Lama never lost an opportunity to make me feel bad about myself. So he said, so I thought I got an ally in this, Lama looked at me and says, well, people are at different levels, dear. No judgment on those people. People are at different levels. I remember that to this day because I've really had to remember. So everyone's at different levels. Now, I can't work for those people on all those different levels. I don't know if I can work for anyone on one level. But those awakened beings can. They see the multiple levels. Lama knew he hit that boy with a mala that was on these layered levels. In terms of that monk's enlightenment, that was the best thing to do. Now, it may have been very temporary. Purify some karma so he is more awake, more aware this lifetime. And it prevents him from, burning down the monastery. I don't know. I'm making this up, right? We don't know. One time, I'll let you go. but just to give an example of that. So we used to do, one of the things that Lama asked, like, one of the kids, the monks, to learn art. Another radical thing, right? Art. What do they need art for? Well, Tonka painting and that sort of thing. And so Lama would ask Pam, organize an art show around the Kopan court, because there'd be so many Westerners, and sell their drawings and paintings and things like that, right? I mean, these are pretty. There were some beautiful things, but they weren't Tonka level yet, And so she'd set up this art show, and so Lama. So there was one woman. People were looking around. Lama came up to Pam, my wife, and whispered to her, says, "That lady, give her what she wants." He says, "Don't bargain with her, okay?" So okay. So I don't know. A few minutes later, a little while later, Lama was gone, and she bid on something, and we're talking about maybe $10, $20. But what she bid on was a Tonka. It was in the Gompa, because the art show was in the Gompa, and that Tonka was very old. I think Lama Yeshe one of the Lamas carried it out of Tibet. But Lama had told Pam, "Don't give her what she wants," and Pam was so freaked out, right? That he explained. She kind of gently, explained, and the woman broke down and cried and left. I have to ask Pam the story, but I think Pam mentioned it later to Lama that she made a mistake. I mean, I think Lama acknowledged, yeah, that was the mistake. I mean, this is, thousands of dollars worth of, it's priceless probably. So, different levels for different people. Okay, you must be tired. Anything else? I told you it's my favorite subject.
Do you think, just from hearing the story, it seems to me that he was especially hard on you because he had special hope in you?
Yeah, I let him down.
I don't think so.
I think, everyone's different. I had some really good connection, good karma, definitely. And thank God I got it. His wrathfulness. Right before he died, just before I left back to Nepal, he gave me one compliment finally. I should share that. Yeah, one compliment. He looked at me and he says, "I think you've improved." That was it. And I did say something back. I said, "That's due to your kindness, Lama." He said, No. He says, "Not my kindness. It's due to your Dakini's kindness," meaning Pam, my wife. And I guess I got kind of smug, like, "Oh yeah," And then he saw that, and immediately I blew it again. He said, "Don't be so proud." He said, "I found her for you," which he did, because he did. I'm not saying that just magically. She was in the monastery, and after we were dating for a few months, he started asking us when we were getting married. He's in everything. So that's another story. See, there's more stories. Okay, so next week, let me just do this to my...
Can I ask you one quick thing? Was Lama wrathful with Sister Max?
I think some. Not as much, though. There's your host next week.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That's John?
Yeah.
Is that you?
See, that's a shawl. Yeah, that's me. See, I always wore that shawl.
That's great.
Wow.
19... Might have been 19... I still had a beard, so 1975. Anyway, I think it's 1975.
Wow.
Okay, thank you all very, 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 very much. I hope it was useful, and like we motivate, just dedicate. Just think. Okay, great. Now, can we all have a close, inseparable relationship in this life and all future lives, never with any break, to the stainless, perfect Mahayana Guru, teaching Vajrayana, in this life, all future lives, never, ever, ever are separated. And then, until we attain our own awakening, and after that, that we provide that to the others, all living beings, we provide the same thing to them. Main thing, never be separated. Never, ever, ever. And with that, then you just remember that the nature of reality is non-dual, and whatever we dedicate doesn't have any inherent existence. The Guru doesn't have any true inherent existence from his side or her side, and us ourselves also don't have any true inherent. This I that is dedicating, this I that will never be separated, it also doesn't exist at all in the way it appears. Until we realize that, though, and we have only good fortune, it benefits others. Okay? Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.